I call to order this meeting of the Pasadena Independent School District Board of Trustees in special session on Tuesday, May 5th, 2026. Happy Cinco de Mayo. In the boardroom of the Administration Building, 3920 Mickey Gilley Boulevard, Pasadena, Texas, at 5:30 p.m. Board members present: Mr. Casey Phelan, Marshall Kendrick, Ms. Nelda Sullivan, Crystal Davila, Paola Gonzalez, and me, Kenny Fernandez. Board members absent: Joe Campos. Let the records indicate that a quorum of board members is present, that this meeting is duly called, and that notice of this meeting is posted in accordance with the Texas Open Meeting Act, Texas Government Code, Chapter 551. At this time, we invite you to stand and remove your hats if you have them for invocation and pledges. Our invocation will be by Mr. Phelan and pledges by Ms. Davila.
Pray with me. Heavenly Father, we come before you today with grateful hearts, giving you all honor, praise, and thanks for the gifts of this day. Thank you for the opportunity to gather together for this special called meeting and for each person in attendance. We recognize your hand in bringing us here, united in purpose and service. Lord, we lift up our superintendent and our staff to you. We ask that you continue to bless them with strength, wisdom, and unwavering dedication as they lead our district. We also pray for each student, teacher, administrator, and staff member across our schools. Thank you for the incredible community that makes this district special. Father, we ask, as we walk through this season of change, we humbly ask for your guidance. Grant the school board discernment, clarity, and insight as we make important decisions that will shape the future of Pasadena ISD. Surround us with your protection, steady our hearts, and help us lead with integrity, unity, and a servant spirit. Lord, we also lift up our soon-to-be 2026 high school graduates as they prepare to walk across the stage for the final time. We ask for your blessings upon their futures, guide their steps, protect their paths, and help them carry forward the values and lessons they've gained as they've joined the proud alumni of this amazing school district. We place all of this in your hands, trusting in your perfect will. We ask all these things in your name. Amen.
Amen. All right, thank you. This now brings us to workshop to review strategic options for district dropout recovery campus and flexible attendance services. Dr. Alita Harrell, Chief of Schools, and Dr. Melissa McCullough, Chief Technology Officer.
As they approach the podium, board members, I just want to kind of give you a little bit of context before they begin. As you know, we showed at the last board meeting our budget workshop. Of course, our budget is not where we want it to be at this point, and so we've looked at every single program and all of our big ticket items across the district. And this was one of the things that we did look at and try to look at through several different sets of lenses, and so they're going to come to you tonight with several different options just for us to have up for discussion, and so I'll turn it over to them.
Thank you. Good evening, Mr. President, Board of Trustees, and Dr. Lopez. Thank you for allowing us to share this information with you this evening. As we begin, I want to ground our presentation in context. Over the past 2 years, both the funding landscape and accountability expectations have changed regarding dropout recovery and the flexibility and support for learning for our at-risk students. When we combine Tegler and Community School, what worked or was required is not the same as what is facing us now and in the future. As we review program options, particularly those designed to serve our most at-risk students, tonight's conversation is about aligning our practices with today's rules, realities, and responsibilities, while, of course, staying true to our commitment to our students. Our intent tonight is to purposely share a broad overview of what we have researched and reviewed as a team. And we want to review the district's current dropout campus and flexible attendance services, review updates related to programming, compliance, and options, and then provide you with a broad overview of options for consideration for the 26-27 school year. And Dr. McCullough works directly with and supports Tegeler Community School. And as we consider each option presented, this will help us ensure and allow us to really make an informed decision when we bring you a recommendation to consider in the future. So I'll turn it over to Dr. McCullough.
Well, good evening. Thank you so much. I'm going to be referring a lot to the folder in front of you, so I do want to just call out a few things in it as I go through. One is you do have a copy of the presentation for yourself, but you also have a packet, and I'll be referring to different pages in it as we go through for more in-depth and additional information. So I did want to ground us tonight in how we currently are serving our dropout recovery programming and flexible attendance services. So we've chosen as a district to have a dropout recovery identified campus, which is our Tegeler Community School, and it actually operates as an alternative education accountability campus, which means that it does have the opportunity to use a different type of graduation rate. It's called the alternative completion rate versus the 4-year graduation rate. But all other accountability requirements, things like attendance, the STAR end of course requirements, the rules related to the number of students who can graduate under an individual graduation plan, those are all the same as any traditional high school campus. We also, though, have the optional flexible school day program, and this is something that we have the opportunity to apply for every year that you as a board review and then approve each year, and we submit to TEA. Right now, you may know it as what used to be community school, but over the last year, it's been combined with Tegeler to become Tegeler Community School. So we do both things on one location. This allows us to use flexible attendance. It allows a lot more flexibility for certain students that are eligible in the terms of the number of courses that they take at one time, the number of hours. It also allows them blended and online flexibility, nights and weekends. But it does have a max limit of 720 hours. And so the state funding for them is not based on the traditional ADA, but rather on the minutes that they are served. So a little bit of a difference than our traditional. And as I mentioned earlier, OFSDP, or the Optional Flexible School Day, our application actually allows us to do it on every high school campus, but currently we only use it at Tegeler Community School. So we're going to talk about that a little bit tonight when we look at the options. So we brought a group together primarily because, as Dr. Lopez and Dr. Harrell mentioned, as we were looking at various programs across the district, there were a couple of things that stood out to us in our initial overview of our dropout recovery that said, okay, we want to take a little bit of a deeper look. Those two things fell under the cost per student that was being incurred, as well as some of the challenges that we're facing with the changes related to accountability compliance. And then thirdly, the new flexibility that we actually have with attendance and flexible learning options that came with the state's changes related to virtual school. So we brought a group together and we looked at some of the things that you see here on the screen. And the core question that we were really looking at was, what could dropout recovery and flexible attendance options look like for our at-risk students or all students in 26-27? And so we kind of framed our analysis and our discussion by looking at key critical factors, doing a real program analysis. We looked at 4 program options that are happening across the state of Texas, and we identified pros and cons for each. And that information is in your packet, and we're going to kind of dive into that. Before we do that, though, I did want to set us up for where are we now? Like, what are we doing now? And so in your packet, you do have a sheet that has these graphs on it on page 3. This particular graph is not in your packet, but I did want to call it out to you. What you're seeing up here is our student demographics by category. This is just telling us how many of our students are in the upper grades, we do have predominantly serving students in 11th and 12th grade at Tegler. Right now, they have about 215 students total, predominantly mostly in 11th and 12th grade. It does and was designed in the new redesign that Dr. Harrell mentioned to serve our overage freshmen, those who were significantly maybe behind their cohort, in order to help accelerate them during their freshman year of high school back into their cohort and return to their zone campus. There's only about 55 of those currently at Tegler right now. Also, this is a very high-risk population with complex academic, social, and economic challenges that do affect their attendance. And so students who are attending Tegler are attending there because they do need the flexible schedule, the credit recovery, acceleration options, and like any student, this is true for all of our students, a strong and consistent adult relationship. That's for every student. So we're going to talk a little bit about some longitudinal data that we have. And on your packet, you saw the enrollment per grade, but we're going to also talk about some average number of days. As we mentioned, the largest population being served is 12th graders. So we did want you to see over the last 3 years, what's the average number of days that a senior was at Tegler? Because they don't just accept them during the summer, they do accept them throughout the year. So we wanted you to see, how long does a student, are they enrolled at Tegler or / community school? And because of the change in the programming, we've kind of separated it for you in your chart so that you can see Tegler and you can see community school, because in 22-23, they were separate. In 23-24, they were separate. But in 24-25, they were co-located at the current Tegler Community School campus. And so we wanted you to really be able to see those differences. The graduation data that you see on the right has to do with the number of students that are graduating both at Tegler and or through the community school program. And you can see it's pretty significant. There's a significant number of students that are graduating, but you can also see that a significant number are graduating under what we call the IGC. And earlier I did mention to you that one of the challenges that we're facing are that TEA actually limits the number of students who can graduate under an individual graduation plan. What that means is the student has reached and met all of their criteria for graduation, except for they haven't passed the STAR EOC exams. And so there's an alternative that allows them to graduate under an individual graduation plan if a committee so determines that, but they have to do a project and some other intensive tutoring and actions. But the state says you can't go above 10% of your graduating class. Prior to 24-25, those students were returning accountability-wise to their zone campuses. But in 24-25, as we've combined them, you can see, and most recently TEA did put a notice that we were going above the 10% threshold. And so that we needed to put some remediation in place for that in order to try to figure out how can we lower that number. So our current zoning, and we think this is really important to understand, is where are the students naturally zoned to. So you see the 5 comprehensive high schools up here. CTHS is not up here because they're not a zoned campus, but they do have 4 students who were referred to Tegler this year as 12th graders. You can see primarily 9th, 10th, 11th, and 12th are there across the way for each of them. And you can see that primarily we get a lot of referrals in that 11th and 12th grade year across the district. We also wanted to give you an idea of where we're sitting right now today as of May 4th. You can see that the students that are in the first column, those are the Achieve referrals, those that you would have normally been thinking about under the community school side. Those are the referrals from each of the high schools for this year. You can also see that some of them already have a graduation date, which means that they have met the criteria for graduation. And so they do already have a graduation date. And then additionally, you can see that there already are some that they've met all of their course requirements, but they've either not passed 1 or more EOCs or they're already aligned for an IGC, like they've already had an IGC meeting to allow them to graduate. So as you can see, if we're just looking at the number of students and the number that are pending EOC and IGC, you can see that we're going above that 10% cap. And so that, again, continues to be an issue that as a group, when we're looking at this, we have to really take into consideration. The last thing I do want to highlight before we kind of dive into some of the pieces that we looked at for each of the options is I think that there's no doubt that we are very proud of our graduation rate and the impact that that has on students and their families. Donna graciously put this together for me today, and the thing that was really exciting about it is I love seeing that number where our district number is higher than the state number, and we're rocking it out of the park. We wanted to see, though, I wanted to kind of personalize it for you. What you're looking at on the top chart is percentage, right? 90.4, 90.9, 91.3, and then, of course, last year, 90.8. But at the bottom, we're talking about individuals. It's the number. So when you look at the actual traditional high schools non-grads in the previous 3 years, those are the number of students who didn't graduate on time with their cohort from our 6 other high schools. You can see, though, that in the middle column, that's the number of students who actually graduated from the community school / achieve side of the Tegeler Community School. And you can also see the number of students who actually didn't graduate on time at Tegeler Community School. Doesn't mean that they're not still there working. It just means that they didn't graduate that year when they were slated to, okay? The other thing that I do want to really point out to you, which also goes along with our increasing graduation rate, is that we're sending less students because we're getting them more successfully through their programming on their zone campus. And so you can see that the enrollment at Tegeler and the need for graduation numbers is going down each year. And you have a broader picture in your packet. It's behind page 3, and it actually is a color-coded chart. And if you look at that chart, it actually has the breakdown by campuses of your non-grads, and it has the breakdown of the 4 years, so you can actually see in further detail if you want to. Additionally, I think it's important to note that we did also look at disciplinary data and other data sources. So we did include for you the last several years' worth of disciplinary data that was at Tegeler in terms, or at community school. And we kind of parsed it out for you so that you could see what were the most highest number of incidents in what category, how many of those were the 11th and 12th graders, and then how many of those actually were in the Achieve program at the community school. And you can see that it's a fairly low in comparison. So love to say that these are the 5 kind of critical areas that when we were thinking about the research and really looking at what's making us successful dropout recovery services, where are places that we have to grow or improve, because we can always continuously improve. These are some of the 5 areas that we really highlighted. One is that our students had access to initial credit and credit recovery in the same place and space, that they had a chance for accelerated pathways as well as programs of studies. And this is going to become even more important in the next 2 years as accountability changes related to career, college, and military readiness and what is required of a student to graduate. Flexible schedule was also important, including our day, night, and weekend options, as well as ensuring that we're compliant with our optional flexible school day programming with minute tracking and attendance. We wanted to ensure support services were available and that we were leveraging them to the best of our ability, being really thoughtful about both funding and support. Special programs, behavioral support, social work, access, ensuring that, does transportation need to be provided? What additional transportation? What other facilities needs are there? And then additionally, just ensuring that we're really taking a mindset of compliance and accountability and ensuring that we're considering that as we look at all of the options. So in your packet, as we look at the 4 options, and I kind of highlight some of the pros and cons, your packet has these items in it listed in a chart for each of the options. So it goes into more detail. So if you look on page 4, that's where it starts in your packet. And each of those options has a chart And we're going to kind of talk about these different pieces as it relates to that. The committee looked at both enrollment and building utilization. We looked at program effectiveness and outcomes, and some of that data I shared with you tonight. Compliance and accountability implications. We looked at staffing and program sustainability. We also looked at other financial considerations like other funding sources. We looked at the facility condition and long-term capital needs. What was the investment that's been made in the actual Tegeler Community Schools, facility in the last 10 years? We also looked at access and logistics. Big thing is if we already know that a student is dealing with challenges related to attendance, access is a really important thing. And so understanding the logistics of supporting students is going to be critical. And then looking at strategic alignment to some of the priorities that we have as a district in terms of meeting the needs of all students. So we looked at 4 options, and I'm going to dive right into the first one, which is going to be maintaining the current status quo, which is the first page you have on there on 4. As we reviewed that, you'll see that there's a lot of detail there on your page, but I'm going to highlight, for the purpose of the workshop, a couple of pros and cons related to maintaining Tegeler Community School in its current format. The first is going to be the continuity for the current students. The 140 students that are in 9th through 11th grade, this would maintain continuity for them. It is staffed with an experienced staff that is trained to support students who are highly at risk. And it is a smaller learning environment, which creates that opportunity for the students in a smaller space and place and allows them a bit of a reset from maybe the larger campus. The cons, though, are it's a high-cost structure, and as I mentioned before earlier, it is a significant cost higher than what we are traditionally paying, our average cost for a student. If we just look at the budget for the campus, the transportation costs, and the salary costs, it is approximately $16,500 per student. Additionally, the TEA accountability and compliance challenges that we're facing with the changes related to the IGC and the graduation 10% threshold, some of the challenges that we're facing related to flexible attendance, and as well as the new opportunities that we have with flexible learning environments that are coming with blended and virtual online hybrid learning. And then last but not least, as we mentioned, the enrollment overall is declining. And so the facility is underutilized for the space.
Can you tell me again, what was that cost per student?
$16,500. That's just when we consider their budget that's allocated to them, transportation costs, and the salaries of the employees. So it doesn't take into account any other additional costs that it take to run the building. Yes, ma'am.
Does that include?
Yes, ma'am. Yes, ma'am. So no matter how long that we're serving them, that's as if we were serving them the whole year long, but we're not, right? You saw that average number of days that the students are attending. We're paying $16,500 per student at the most simplest terms, right? But some of the students are only attending for 50 days or 60 days, and some are attending up to 118 days for just the seniors. Our freshmen and our sophomore enrolled all year long. But you saw those enrollment numbers for our freshmen and our sophomore.
What is the largest enrollment you could handle?
Well, it would depend, really. I mean, it is right now in the way that it is currently staffed, it probably could handle a significant number of more students. And there is a trade-off for that, right? Because these are our most at-risk students who are being served in a dropout recovery and flexible learning environment. So we are making the class sizes fairly small to meet their needs.
Mr. Kendrick, were you wondering on that, how much will the building hold, or just wondering, or was it just the actual program, what it was designed for?
With current staffing that's there now,
Okay, yeah. So
number of students maximum.
we could definitely increase on both of those.
Absolutely. And I can get you a total number that if it was being run like a traditional campus, what the actual numbers would be, so that you can have that information.
Enrollment continues to drop, huh?
The enrollment has dropped, but not because of a zoning issue, right? It's just because we're doing a good job on our comprehensive campuses, and we are having fewer students who need that level of support and services, which is a really great and, thing, right?
Are the students identified? So from their campus, how are they identified as someone who needs?
Absolutely. So there are a couple of different ways. So the freshmen are identified when they're in intermediate school, and they are identified because they are not on track with their cohort, which basically means that at some point in PK to 8th grade, they fell behind, right? And so they're not with who they started school with. So they're over age 8th graders. So they're, 14, 15. And so they're identified that way, and then they're given the opportunity. Of course, this is a choice. So they meet with their counselor and their parents, and they look to see, would Tegler be the right place or space for them in order to get them accelerated so that when they go back to their zoned high school, they're more on track with their original cohort. For our 10th and 11th and 12th graders, some of the 10th graders, of course, they were there as 9th graders, and so they're continuing, and that's the smallest number, right? And then 11th and 12th graders are typically behind. They've been in high school, they're credit deficient. There's some issue really that's keeping them, particularly with attendance, most likely, and success in the classroom, where Tegler's smaller learning environment and or flexible ability to have a flexible schedule might provide the need or fill the space for the student. So they're referred by their counselor as they're identified, and then of course they go through kind of an intake and interview process with the campus.
Yes, historically, now it's Tegler Community School, but historically, the Tegler students were the ones that were identified as 8th graders, right?
And it actually went down further. Originally, before the regroup that happened a couple of years ago, Tegler served students who were in intermediate. And so they could apply and go to Tegler as a 7th or 8th grader, and then all the way through high school they could stay.
So it seems to me like the kids coming from, or like to community school, right? So if we were to separate the two in my mind, okay? It seems like those needs are different.
I think that there are some, how would I put this? I would say more urgent, if that makes sense, because they're both behind. They're both not on track. One is more urgently not on track because they're now 16, 17, 18, and they have some needs that are more urgent to fix, but not as any less important are the ones that are the 8th graders that need the support. But it's more likely we're going to get them back on track and back to their zone high school and sailing away, right, versus the 11th or 12th grader who hasn't been being successful.
Are you okay with answering these questions, or do you want us to?
Oh my gosh, no, this
Stop.
is great.
Okay.
I would rather answer them while
Okay.
we're doing it, and then I can highlight some things. That way you don't have to wait.
We don't want to interrupt your presentation, but at the same time, if we have questions, either write them down or we can.
Oh, please ask.
Ask
Mr.
away.
Phelan saw me practicing earlier, so I gave it away, so.
Regular students, are they?
No, you hit it on that nail. They actually are separated slightly, and we have different class structures depending on what the student needs. So some of the students are receiving direct instruction all day long, face-to-face with their teachers, and in other cases, there might be students who are in Achieve, and they're doing some blended learning. They're being supported by their teacher. They might be doing night school. It's different places and spaces. Now, some of the teachers cross. They do, they serve both groups of students, but typically they are not in the same classes. Are you okay with me going to option 2? Okay. So we're going to look at option 2. And option 2, we included option 2 because when we did research, it is happening across the state and other areas. And so we felt like it would be remiss not to include it as an option and to share that information with you. But you will notice that it doesn't substantially change the programming, or how it is. It's just relocating it. So the major pro with option 2 is that you can repurpose the current facility. So it helps with the funding side of things a bit, but primarily you would just be moving, taking the campus and you would be moving it to another district location and co-locating it, right? So you have the pro of the experienced staff. Again, it would be a predictable model because it's what they're doing now, just doing it in a different physical location. But the cons, again, would be the same thing, high cost structure because you're just lifting it and taking it. Transportation costs would still exist. You're still staffing at the same way. You're still doing the same services in the same way. You're just locating it physically in a different building. But the TEA accountability and compliance challenges would continue to exist because it would remain as a campus of accountability, and so you would continue to see those challenges. Option 3 is a program within a comprehensive high school. So this would be making the shift to where it would not be its own campus of accountability. It would become fully just a program that was then slotted into one comprehensive high school. So that would help us with reducing the lower per student cost. It would expand some of the academic and support access because it would be on a comprehensive high school where you have that staff already existing and the plethora of options that exist for electives, CCMR, et cetera. And of course, then there would be shared staffing, so that would help with that. There was a con, though. It would be a loss of a smaller learning environment if it wasn't handled correctly and provided for those students to have smaller classes. So that could be a loss of a smaller learning environment. And it also does not solve for the TEA accountability and compliance challenges because now we've just shifted it from Tegler as a standalone campus of accountability to one other comprehensive campus. And so it just shifts the percentage problem, and it doesn't actually kind of mitigate it. You're just moving it. The last option is a hybrid option. This would be a multi-site option. It would be similar to the program option, option number 3, so you're going to see some similarities to option number 3. It would be a lower percent cost. It would include the expanded flexibility for academic and support access. It would also allow us to leverage Flex Virtual High School and some of the hybrid work that we've already been piloting on several of our high school campuses this year. It would include shared staffing, so you'd see reduced costs there. And it would lower the TEA accountability and compliance challenges because you would be dispersing those students' accountability and IGC opportunity back to their home campus, which then puts less of a burden on that and allows us to really target students who really need an IGC based on what they really need and not be constrained as much by the small number of enrollment that's happening at Tegler for that. Because quite frankly, there are students who need the IGC project. They need that opportunity. They've gone through every opportunity to take the EOC. They've been through intensive tutoring. They've been through intensive intervention. And the IGC is the right thing for them. But under the TEA accountability rules, we are being constrained to that 10%. And because we're doing that good job of lowering the enrollment, those two things are going to be in conflict with each other if we're at a small campus. The cons here are it does reduce the opportunity for students to have a fresh start. So if they were a student who maybe they needed a reset at a different location, that would reduce that opportunity for that. And it will require strong intervention and case management on the zoned home campuses and some really clear support from us here at the district, which I think in anything we're willing to do. But as a committee, we didn't want to not call that out because it will be coordinating across multiple sites to ensure that we're doing those services, which we already do on most of those campuses already. It would just be continuing to do them with our students who are in 11th and 12th grade at most risk. So that gives us our 4 options. And like I mentioned, you have a lot more information in your packet. And behind option one, you also had the budget information for Tegler specifically for the last 4 years. And you also had the current staffing for Tegler so that you have that information as well. So what additional questions can I answer?
But looking at it, the way you described number three, option three and number four, so basically what you're doing is instead of all the kids that are going to Tegler and career, say, I'm assuming, the kids that are coming from Pasadena High School, instead of going to Tegler, they stay at Pasadena High School. They have access to all these programs and everything. They're just located on a certain part of the campus.
Yes, that would be option four.
Right, okay.
Option three would be we pick a comprehensive high school one, and then we make it a program within the school, and
Gotcha.
all the accountability goes to that one high school.
So Pasadena would go to Memorial, Dobie would go to Memorial, everybody would go to.
Yes, sir.
just
Like that
hypothetically
could be one option that we could look at. Yes, ma'am.
I know there's a lot of material here. Question, is there a definition?
Not in your packet, no ma'am, there isn't, but we can certainly get you kind of a descriptive of the general description of them, yes. Yes, ma'am.
question.
Well, it seems to me like the higher risk students, so 11th and 12th, right? So we talk about, we talked about that earlier. You said, I guess that seems in my mind like a higher risk of not graduating.
Mm-hmm.
So them anywhere, whatever the decision is, right? Could that potentially affect graduation rate? Because there's a reason why community schools was started years ago, before my time. Something, I'm not saying the high schools are lacking anything, but something was not provided at their local schools that was provided there. And so it seems to me like, even if they go back to their home campus, can that level of staffing, class size numbers, all of that be provided within that structure if it had not been able to be provided before?
I think you call it a really important point that right now, in the moment we're sitting in, we have an option and an opportunity that we didn't have before. So the only place that we were really able to manage flexible attendance, that's the piece we're talking about for those 12th graders primarily, right? And some of the 11th graders, but primarily the 12th graders, is the optional flexible school day programming. That's what we weren't able to provide or do on the comprehensive campuses. And part of that had to do with rules related to virtual learning and blended learning and pieces like that, which we now have different opportunities with. So the piece that gave them that opportunity at Tegler can now be replicated at those comprehensive high schools if we choose to go down that path with that type of programming. We're already doing it at Pasadena High School for students as a hybrid through the new attendance and accountability rules that came out related to virtual and blended learning. We piloted a cohort of that this past year of students who had really attendance challenges, and they were losing credit due to attendance. So by working with them and their families, Mr. Friend and his team identified students who they were really struggling with getting to school on time and being there, or they needed to leave earlier, or they needed to have some flexibility in their schedule. So we were able to flex and hybrid their schedule, so they had some face-to-face and some blended learning opportunity, as well as a study hall. And we have seen success for those students who now the attendance isn't the issue for them. And for many of our 11th and 12th graders who aren't being successful at the home campus, not all of them, right? They have a complex series of challenges. But many of them do have attendance challenges and the need for flexibility for whatever reason. So I think that that's one issue that we can do. It would be a coordinated effort. Each of our campuses has supports that are related to mental health, social, emotional behavior, all of those things, and each of those campuses could leverage those as well to address them. So the question is how do we get them early? And how are we going to improve that? As we've seen each of those high schools do already, they've been improving it. So how do we expand that so that our improvement, sorry, not approval, that improvement.
Now, are you talking about community schools, or are you talking about Tegler students?
So they're all one, honestly, and I know that everybody wants to divide them, but they are all on one campus of accountability.
I understand.
So the Tegler students who are the 55 basically that are as freshmen, so that's the group I want you to kind of think of in your head. There are 55 freshmen who went to Tegler and never went to their zoned high school. And they went to Tegler because they were behind their cohort. So the old model of where a student could just say, I'd like to go to Tegler and apply and go, we don't do that anymore. It's only students who are over age and behind as 8th graders. So that number is decreased from last year to this year. So the students who get back on track, they go back to their zone campus. Some of them stay in 10th grade, but it's small. The students who are coming over for maybe enrolling in 11th or 12th, we're not seeing the students stay from freshman to 12th grade. That's not the intent of the new design, right? So it's really the 11th and 12th grade students who are being, they call it Achieve now, who have that flexible optional school day programming available to them. Those are the big differences between the two.
So with the optional flexible school day, there's still staff that's able to, I'm thinking more of the student who may have some learning challenges as well, not just attendance. It's not all online. They do have support there provided to them, one-on-one instruction. I heard you say something like that, but I just want to confirm.
They do have small group instruction, but it is a primarily accelerated and blended learning environment. That is what they're doing. They do have some students who have some support learning needs, but primarily these students have challenges related to being at school and have a desire to get back on track.
I'm wondering, what are the costs for option 3 and option 4?
Cost per student. At this time, we haven't calculated that yet. It would depend on where we chose to place them and what we did. We can tell, though, just if you thought about it from staffing purposes and transportation costs, it will be less. So if you think about option 4, transportation occurs to all of our high schools every day normally. So we're no longer running separate routes. So their transportation costs get cost out. When you think about staffing, it will reduce through attrition our staffing for that. Obviously, we would work on a transition plan for that and work through it, but it would be reduced staffing. And then, of course, the separate budget that exists currently to be able to manage and run a full facility and building would not exist. Yes, ma'am.
We don't provide transportation.
Mm-hmm. If they're on the routes, then they have the opportunity since they've been at Tegler Community School. Yes, ma'am.
At what point we started.
Any other questions that I can answer for you tonight?
Mission. Make economic sense to keep it open.
Ultimately, the goal is not to have a Tegler.
I mean, ultimately, our goal in life would be that we can
Right.
serve our students well and meet every need. And then we recognize that, which, again, to the point of our district campuses are doing a great job. Our high schools are doing a great job to continue to improve their graduation rates on their own campuses.
And obviously getting them up to high school, they're doing a great job.
Yes, sir.
Comprehensive high schools doing better with the students that are having problems, which is causing your drop in enrollment. Financial situation we're looking at for next business standpoint, there's only one answer. You have a big heart. If you can afford it, that's one thing.
Well, I hope that being able to provide you with information to be informed about any, future decisions, we provide you with enough, but we will get you the information that you asked for tonight that we didn't have. Yes, ma'am.
Guessing this has already been explored, and you mentioned accountability and the changes. Is there no District of Innovation exception available for that?
The best person to talk about District of Innovation is sitting over here, but I will say that no, under the accountability rules related to it, we are an AEA, so that does give us that flexibility in graduation, but not for the other pieces.
Like the thought process, though. District of Innovation.
Any other questions?
Comment. Very impressed with what you've done. Top of it, you're looking at it, and you looked at all options. Best for kids. The information you provided.
Well, thank you very much. It was a team effort. I do have to call out Beth Jordan and Tamika Alfred Stevens' office. She helped with the budget documents. Donna Summers with accountability. Jennifer Guerrero with our compliance. So it was a team effort, and I'm very thankful. So thank you very much. And Dr. Harrell, of course, helping lead us. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you very much.
All right, this leads us to public comment. We have no public comment at this time, and we are going to close to pursuant to Texas Government Code Section 551.071, 551.072, and 551.074. We reconvene in open session at 7:47. Action items. Consideration of possible approval of administrative personnel. There is no administrative personnel at this time. Consideration of possible approval of contract renewals for 2026, 2027.
So moved.
Motion by Mr. Phelan, second by Ms. Gonzalez. Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. Consideration possible approval of the superintendent's recommendation to propose non-renewal of the 2025-2026 term employment contract between Pasadena ISD and Meldenice Burt, High School Campus Content Specialist at Tegler Community Schools, effective at the end of 2025-2026 school year, and related actions.
Second.
Hold on.
I move that this board approve the superintendent's recommendation and propose non-renewal of the contract between Pasadena ISD and Meldenice Burt, High School Campus Content Specialist at Tegler Community School, effective at the end of the 25-26 school year, as discussed in executive session. I further move that this board authorize and direct the superintendent or her designee to provide Mrs. Burt with written notice of this board's action in compliance with Chapter 21 of the Texas Education Code as discussed in executive session.
Okay, motion by Ms. Sullivan, second by Mr. Kendrick. Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. There being no further business come before this board, we stand adjourned at 7:49 PM.